morning. This is Anna Patterson with the North Carolina Housing Coalition. Thanks for joining us this morning for our housing call. And without further ado, I will turn it over to our Director of Housing Policy, Stephanie Watkins Cruz.
Good morning, everyone. I hope you all are having a great week so far. I hope you're staying warm, and I hope you're staying away from this flu that keeps trying to get on everybody. The top things that we're going to discuss for this week, we are going to be circulating a sign-on letter that has been authored by the National Low-Income Housing Coalition in support of the bipartisan FEMA Act. So we'll talk a little bit about that. And as our luck would have it, literally just hours before this call, the federal budget, the THUD bill text, so the text for the Transportation, Housing, and Urban Development, the spending has just been released this morning. So we're going to dive into that a little bit more, but we're going to just give you some highlights today as we take some time after today to dig in. And then there have been some other interesting reports that we'll just bring your attention to in the call notes. So definitely a lot of meat to the call notes this week. So make sure when those are released, you check those out. On the federal update side, as I mentioned, the National Low-Income Housing Coalition, they are circulating a letter, and the letter has the sign-on letter deadline for supporting the bipartisan FEMA Act has been extended to January 30th for organizations. So many of you may have heard, but if you have not, just a review. The final FEMA Review Council meeting was supposed to be scheduled for December 11th and was unexpectedly canceled without a message to the public. The council was supposed to release and vote on the final draft of their report recommending what news sources are reporting to be drastic and harmful changes for the agency's future. So news outlets have obtained a copy of the draft of the final report that was heavily edited by the Department of the Homeland Security Secretary. And there are a few recommendations that have a lot of advocates, again, pretty concerned. So one of the recommendations includes gutting FEMA's workforce by 50%. Increasing the level of damage that it takes for a place to qualify for any kind of disaster assistance at all, and then keeping FEMA under the Department of Homeland Security. These are all ideas that would be incredibly damaging to disaster survivors and communities. And so we know that this would set our disaster recovery system back decades. And one of the things that we're really hoping to communicate through this sign-on letter is that we envision a future that includes this agency through the bipartisan FEMA Act, because there has been a lot of bipartisan conversation around this, in which FEMA could be improved and could better ensure that disaster survivors can access the assistance they need to fully recover, all while encouraging states to take greater steps to address their disaster risk, as opposed to gutting the organization, reducing their capacity, and making it harder for disaster survivors and communities to be able to get the assistance that they need. So as part of this effort, we're asking organizations in our network to sign on to this letter by January 30th. This will be included in the call notes. If you're curious also about the FEMA Act, we have that bill text linked in the call notes as well. As of this morning, as I mentioned a few moments ago, as luck would have it, this does happen to us sometimes. Something is released early this morning, so after the call notes are already done, but the Transportation, Housing, and Urban Development budget was just released as part of the third and final round of spending bills. And so Congress has been passing these bills in small batches, and they either need to pass the remaining spending bills or pass another continuing resolution by January 30th, which is when the current continuing resolution expires. Since we haven't had time to fully dive into the bill text yet, we'll have more for you later in this week's policy update email. However, I will go ahead and just list off some highlights that we have already seen from the text that was released, and also from some reports that people are getting out pretty quickly. So overall, in this latest minibus, which includes not only THUD, but labor, health, and human services, as well as transportation, housing, and urban development, there seems to be improved bipartisan bicameral backing. The House Democrat Appropriations Committee released a statement of support this morning, and there are communications being released where it seems that this text continues to reject the forceful rejection of extreme cuts to federal programs that have been proposed by the Trump administration in the past and continuously. So we're going to continue to dive into that. We know so far the Department of Housing and Urban Development for fiscal year 26, the bill provides $74 billion in discretionary spending for housing programs. And this is an increase of 37 billion above the president's budget request and 5.5 billion above the other House Republican bill. And so there are a lot of different pieces in the text that are gearing towards investing in project-based rental assistance, housing for the elderly, housing for persons with disabilities, as well as homeless assistance grants and increases for those programs, as well as for community planning and development and community development block grants, which have been under extreme pressure over the last year. So, like I mentioned, we're going to continue to dive into this text, make sure that we fully wrap our heads around it. And in our weekly policy update, we'll make sure to bring out all of those good highlights and kind of get a good analysis in there for you. Some additional headlines. There is a few reports that we want to lift your attention to. At the state level, some of the discussions from last week's property tax committee meeting have been highlighted in different pieces. From being there, still kind of processing the discussion, staff at the General Assembly continues to do a really good job of highlighting, the constitutional authority of what the General Assembly can and can't do, and where the authority and powers lie when it comes to levying and classifying taxes. And then there are a lot of great presentations from the League of Municipalities, as well as the City and County Commissioners Association. And so there seems to be still some education that has to be done around what this means for different groups. There seems to be an understanding about that relief is needed. The committee also kind of broached into the topic a bit about how property tax are levied against affordable housing developments, and there's a bit more education that needs to be done on that. So we're going to continue to see how we can show up in that space and keep you posted. On the disaster recovery housing front, just a reminder that the deadline for single-family housing programs was extended through January 31st. So that is coming up quickly, and we still have the link and other information on how to apply in the call notes as well. And on the report side, there are several. So from our partners at the North Carolina Housing Finance Agency, they released a report highlighting how recent research finds that rising down payments increases the need for assistance. And so just a correlation between the need for down payment assistance increasing as down payments, in order to be competitive for purchasing a home, increase as well. There's also an interesting piece from the Journal of the American Medical Association connecting housing instability following medical debt exposure among U.S. adults between the years 2023 to 2025. And so this report looked at a study of just over 1,500 U.S. adults, and they estimated that any medical debt was associated with a 7 percentage point increase in the probability of experiencing housing instability in the subsequent year. And then from NeighborWorks, we have another great report talking about bridging the missing middle, what Americans are saying about housing and affordability. So although 95% of Americans say affordability is an important aspect of housing to them personally, and 92% of Americans say proximity to essential services such as grocery stores, a post office, healthcare facilities, and more are also important to them. So this kind of highlights what people care about, and the fact that affordability just increasingly is becoming a point of tension and a point of importance. Some events we want to lift up for you. Renew NC is hosting a virtual information session tomorrow, Wednesday, January 21st at 1 p.m. to provide an overview of the small rental rehabilitation program and answer questions for potential applicants. This program, just for an overview, helps eligible landlords repair, reconstruct, or replace small rental properties, so this is between 1 and 4 units, that were damaged by Hurricane Helene. So we have 2 links for you to check out. There's one with just details about the qualifications and how to apply, and there's another that will allow you to register for the information session. The Governor's Advisory Committee on Western North Carolina will also be meeting again in a few weeks on February 9th from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m., and there is a public registration link. The Housing Policy Forum and Capitol Hill Day of 2026 for the National Low-Income Housing Coalition will be taking place March 10th through the 13th in Washington, D.C. And the Just Economy Conference will be happening in D.C. April 14th through the 15th in Washington, D.C., hosted by the National Community Reinvestment Coalition. So we have links for all of those there for you. We're going to dive into this THUD budget immediately after this and kind of get a full understanding of what this could mean, and also try and understand the likelihood of it moving. As I mentioned earlier, I hope you all are staying warm. I hope you all are staying healthy, and we will talk to you next time.